Welcome back to NewsWire here on SportsGrid. Breaking news from the National Football League. As Jacob Kamaker and I were just discussing, the league usually, has their Monday press conferences, and then Tuesday is usually when they make any changes in the NFL. But look, the Giants are, basically in a spot where they're getting ahead of it. What am I talking about here? I'll get to the point. ESPN is reporting that Brian Daboll has been fired as head coach of the Giants. Donnie Rightside, what timing for Donnie to be here with us to break it all down. He thought we were just going to do his Eagles tonight on Monday Night Football, but we get to the Giants first. Donnie, this is the least surprising thing to happen here on a Monday. They blew the game against the Broncos. They absolutely blew the game yesterday, and that's what's going to get you fired in the National Football League when you're already on thin ice. Look, if the Giants would have just split those two games, I think that he would be okay, and I also think that he had no future there. By the way, he's going to be fine. He'll be an offensive coordinator for some team in the NFL next season, but time is clearly up when you have your defense blowing games like that.
Loved him as a Buffalo Bills offensive coordinator. When the Giants hired him, I thought that was a very sound move, but it was quick right away after that first year that he wasn't going to cut it anymore. And what gets you fired in the NFL these days? Certainly bad records, embarrassing the franchise. I get that. But when you finally think you have your franchise quarterback and you are not protecting him, and he's been checked for concussions 4 times in the season, and he's saying this season is lost, but yet I'm continuing to call play after play after play, which has my superstar quarterback running around like a tailback in the middle of the field getting blasted. Yesterday, that concussion sends him out. And you're right about this. Competency still allows you to win that football game. You had the lead. You should have won. It's no surprise that when you continuously blow double-digit leads in the NFL, it's because of you, not the players, after a while. No surprise he got fired today for me, Craig.
Yeah, you know what? It's funny that you bring that up. I didn't really consider that. Do you think that, like, if I gave you a pie chart of 100%, would you say that the loss is 90%, and then you're right about Dart. He has him running up the middle constantly. I'm surprised that he hasn't been hurt to this point. Do you think that that is a bigger factor in that, or do you think, strictly speaking, that if Dart has a concussion yesterday, but the Giants win, Daboll still has a job today? Probably, right?
Yeah, I think the bigger deal is him actually blowing those leads. Because as a coach, you have double-digit leads. The chances of you winning that football game, I mean, what worst-case scenario is 75-25 or 50-50, not losing just about every game you have a lead in. That's going to get you fired. But also when you start to weigh, hey, we're not getting the best coaching philosophy out here, and B, what are you doing with my quarterback? And if I think I have a franchise guy, he's not going to make it past year 2 because he had his 4th concussion already. Those things all weigh into it. Because I would say yesterday, if they won that football game and Dart didn't get hurt, he's not getting fired today. But that's a double combination. Embarrassing loss, and your starting quarterback went down who's young, and you're trying to protect. You're out the door quicker than that.
Yeah, and look, he'll be in. Houston will probably need a new offensive coordinator next year. He'll be there, or finds the Jets, some team. He'll be perfectly fine for his future. Welcome back to NewsWire here on SportsGrid. Great to have Adam Kaplan, our SportsGrid insider, talking about our big story of the day, which comes from the National Football League, as Brian Daboll has been fired by the Giants after a few lackluster seasons, and specifically a couple of very lackluster losses over the last couple of weeks, 2 out of the last 3 weeks to be specific. Adam, I think Daboll probably wasn't going to come back anyway next season, but this is when anything like this happens, from covering the league, I know from covering sports too, it comes from the owner, right? Like, this is the spot where the owner steps in and says, hey, we can't have this kind of stuff happening. Where do the Giants go from here? It seems to me that they feel like they have their quarterback in tow. They'll get their wide receiver back next season. Their front 4 is pretty good too. So it's not one of these jobs where, I guess, like New Orleans, where that you're in for another long year. The Jets, where you're in for another long year. The Giants conceivably have a few pieces in place, right?
They do. Malik Neighbors will come back from his ACL injury next year, so they'll get him back. He's a stud talent. Scatterbo, unfortunately, as we know, had that bad injury. He'll be back next year. Look, there are some pieces, as you said. Now, here's why it's going to be an attractive job. It's the quarterback. Jackson Dart is well respected around the league. He's gotten off to a pretty good start. Look, he's had some starts where he could play better, but he is a rookie quarterback. He's well ahead of schedule. He's shown enough to show that he can play in this league. So, Craig, when you look at the offensive coordinator types like Joe Brady of the Bills, he's done a really good job after getting fired by the Panthers in season, unfortunately, 3 years ago. But he's doing a great job. You look at Matt Nagy, the Chiefs offensive coordinator. Andy Reid calls the plays. Nagy did make the playoffs as a head coach for the Bears. He got Mitch Trubisky in the playoffs. He's coached quarterbacks. Andy Reid told me once, that Matt Nagy of all the guys who work for him would be the best head coach that in terms of candidates that he had. So Nagy deserves probably another shot. But bottom line is they'll look to continue to develop the quarterback. But one thing I do want to say about Daboll, remember, Craig, when they made the playoffs in 2022? Remember talking to someone with the Giants who they were not thinking that they'd be in the playoffs that year. It was kind of a turnaround year. Figured things out with Daniel Jones. You had the change of coaching staff. And they stunned it. They stunned everybody, made the playoffs. Won a playoff game at Minnesota, by the way. Won the game pretty handily. Then it's been downhill ever since. No winning record since then. And it was a disaster. And Craig, the other part I would add to this is teams always know. Like you could say, oh, they could have done this at the end of the season. Why wait when you know you're going to fire the head coach? Like that, they knew this. This is something they just woke up in the morning. John Mara and the Mara family and the Tisch family said, you know what, let's fire him now. This has been on their mind to do this, and they did it now. So, and Mike Kafka, the OC, who, by the way, got the play calling back this year. Daboll took it away from him. He gave him back to him this year. He's supposedly going to be the interim head coach. And, Mike, talking to people, know him. He wants to be a head coach. I know it's tough. You don't have Malik Neighbors. Dart's got the concussion. It's going to be hard for them to be competitive, but this is an audition for Mike Kafka, and good luck to him.
Yeah, definitely so. And Joe Shane, I would assume, who's the general manager right now, Adam, he was the one who hired, of course, Daboll, and also, traded Saquon Barkley famously too. And unfortunately, a lot of that stuff for him showed up on video, which has kind of destroyed the idea of Hard Knocks at this point. It's why nobody wants to do it because of that. I don't know. Greer got fired less than 10 days ago. The Giants could just hang on till the end of the year, but I guess what, the next month or so, they'll probably just let everybody know he won't be back too.
Well, so let's go back to the Jets list here. Team that plays in the same stadium. So they fired Robert Saleh first, and then later, before the end, they fired Joe Douglas, general manager, who's now in Philly as one of Howie Roseman's assistants in the personnel department. So sometimes you fire them both at the same time. Sometimes you separate them. But Joe Shane's the architect of this team. Now, by the way, the ownership hired the general manager and the head coach. It's just because Shane and Daboll worked together with the Bills, they were able to come in together more or less the same. But it just didn't end well. And look, remember with Saquon Barkley, he wasn't traded. He actually signed as a free agent.
Right.
And they decided, Craig, like they were not going to pay big bucks. You never know when you go to the NFL's best offensive line. Obviously, he's going to be better than he sets a record for one season for the Super Bowl. By the way, Jonathan Taylor might be pushing at this point. We'll see what happens. But yeah, look, it's been a nightmare for the Tisch family and the Mara family for many years now. They were once really the epitome of what the NFL should look like in terms of success, but they've been downtrodden for so many years, ever since Tom Coughlin's been fired, and they've been on the downward slide.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that because I was going to ask you, who was the last coach of the Giants to have success? Because after Coughlin, Ben McAdoo, Steve Spagnuolo, Pat Shurmur, Joe Judge, Brian Daboll, zero success. The only one on that list that I would say that has a prominent role right now in the NFL, if I'm not mistaken, is Spagnuolo, who's still great as a coordinator, right? Yeah. But beyond, beyond that, not a heck of a lot.